Hi, everyone, and thank you so much for joining this third webinar of a four-part series developed in collaboration with the National Head Start Association, Scott's Miracle-Gro Foundation, and Kids Gardening. We're really excited that you are all interested in learning more about the Grow More Good initiative and how can you incorporate gardens into your Head Start or Early Head Start or other ECE program. But before we begin, I would like to give just a few technical reminders just to make sure we can all get the most out of this really quick one-hour webinar. And we would love as much engagement as possible and encourage you to use the questions boxes on your webinar toolbar that you should see on your screen. We will address your questions throughout the webinar when possible, but we have a dedicated Q&A time at the end of the webinar where we'll be able to address your questions then. But because of the number of the people on this webinar too, we want to encourage you to actually use that question or comments box instead of using the hand raising icon, just so we can see all the questions that do come in and we can address them after the webinar if we aren't able to during. We will also have several polls and questions throughout the webinar so we can learn a lot more about you and who is in attendance today and how you all plan to move forward with planting gardens. So please participate in those polls when they are provided on your screen so we can learn as much from you as we can. And then before diving in, I would actually like to share a few updates from the Grow More Good initiative. If you're not familiar with the initiative, I encourage you to visit our website. I believe it's right up on the screen, and our partners' websites as well to learn more. But this past January, we announced and awarded our first cohort of 10 Head Start programs who won Grow More Good garden grants. These programs are all across the U.S. in different regions. We have migrant seasonal, we have tribal, we have them in the South, Northeast, and the West, and they all have very different and amazing plans in place for building really effective and sustainable gardens in their Head Start programs and their communities. And right now, most of the 10 grantees have completed what we're calling the community build days, where they build their garden beds and start to plant their crops. And the most exciting thing about this project is that each of these grantees has really different plans to meet the cultural and physical needs of their communities. So we're learning so much from each of the programs who's really responding to the needs of their families and really getting the community involved in this exciting initiative. If you're interested in learning more about this cohort of grantees or applying for future grants, just let me know, and we're actually going to talk about that a little bit later in the webinar as well. And then now I would just like to quickly provide a little bit more information about the National Head Start Association and a little bit more about this exciting partnership. So NHSA is a nonprofit organization committed to the belief that every child, regardless of circumstances at birth, has the ability to succeed in life. NHSA is the voice for more than 1 million children, 250,000 staff, and 1,600 Head Start grantees in the United States. So since 1974, NHSA has worked diligently for policy changes that ensure all at-risk children have access to the Head Start model of support for the whole child, the family, and the community. Head Start's vision is to lead and to advocate for children and families all across the country to ensure that all vulnerable children and families have what they need to succeed. So along with our strong advocacy efforts, we also provide 6 professional development conferences throughout the year, share lots of resources and tools on topics most relevant to our field through webinars, trainings, blogs, media outreach, and provide opportunities for idea sharing and peer-to-peer learning on some of our online communities. One of our most exciting partnerships has really allowed us to combine all of these efforts to expand our work around nutrition, gardening, and the overall Head Start health and wellness. So our partnership with Scott's Miracle-Gro and Kids Gardening has really been exciting and successful thus far, and we're excited to continue for 2 more years. So now I would just like to share a little bit more about our funder and partner, Scott's Miracle-Gro Foundation. They are engaging in a very new and exciting path to reach more children and families in underserved communities with the materials and education that they need to build their own gardens and grow their own fresh foods. So one way that they're doing that is expanding into the Head Start community through this exciting initiative. But if you guys have any questions about Scott's Miracle-Gro Foundation, just let me know and I will connect you or help answer any questions that you have. But now I am going to turn it over to Helen from Kids Gardening, who has been an amazing partner in this initiative, and they've been really providing their expertise for a lot of the educational materials and trainings through a lot of the webinars and conference sessions that we've done. So I will let you go ahead and take it away, Helen.
Thanks, Sarah. Hi, everyone. This is Helen Rortvedt from Kids Gardening, and really pleased to be with you this afternoon. We are just really excited to be working with NHSA and Scott's Miracle-Gro Foundation on this Grow More Good initiative. And Kids Gardening is a national nonprofit organization. We're based in Burlington, Vermont, but we support school and youth garden programs all across the country. And we do that by offering also some grant funding and a lot of educational resources and original content. So hopefully some of you are aware of the Early Childhood Education Resource Hub that we have available on our website. We'll provide a link for that at the end of the webinar if you're not aware of it. And we are also fortunate to be visiting several of the conferences that NHSA puts on each year for some in-person workshops. So thanks to those who may have joined us in San Antonio a couple of weeks ago, and we look forward to presenting at future conferences to share tips and best practices on how to bring garden programs into your Head Start and early childhood centers. So you'll be hearing a lot more from my colleague Sarah Pounders later on during the webinar, and she has a wealth of information to share with you about how to bring gardening to your kids. So thank you so much for having us today. We're thrilled to be a part of it.
Thank you so much, Helen. Yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and move on to the first poll that we have. I'm going to go ahead and launch that on your screen. 1 second. It's just really helpful for us to kind of know who's on the webinar today so we can really guide the rest of our discussion. You should see it on your screen now. We'll just give everyone just about 10 or 20 seconds to fill that out. Great, thanks so much. I'm going to go ahead and close that poll. It looks like we have about 50% early childhood educators and staff, 30% program managers and directors, 8% curriculum specialists or engagement, and then 1% parents, that's great, and then 12% other. So I think you should be able to see those on the screen right now, and then I'll move on to the next poll. 1 moment. Okay, do you have a garden in your program currently? Just give you about 10 or 20 seconds to go ahead and fill that out. Great, it looks like we have a lot of people who already have a garden. That's exciting. I'm going to go ahead and close that poll. So it looks like we have about 27 yes. We have been gardening for a while, 21 yes, we just started, 21% not yet, but we're planning one, and 30% no, but we are considering one. Very helpful. I'm glad so many people already are engaged in gardening. Good to hear. All right, I will go ahead and turn it over to Sarah, who is going to be leading a majority of the rest of the webinar. So I will let you take it from here, Sarah.
Okay, thank you very much. So my name is Sarah Pounders, and I'm an education specialist at Kids Gardening. I have been lucky enough to be working with youth garden programs for the last 20 plus years, and I'm excited to be able to share some of the things that I've learned about early childhood gardens with you guys. Next slide. So I'm just going to start out by just kind of giving just a broad overview of some of the benefits that we've seen with gardening with young children. First of all, there's the cognitive development that takes place as kids engage in the garden, from learning from real world examples, from learning in a garden that is very engaging, and it gives you a chance to really teach across the curriculum. We see physical development related benefits from working with the fine growth skills, such as with seeds or picking out small petals or weeds, and then to the gross motor skills from using things like shovels and wheelbarrows. Just a lot of really great exercise benefits, but also the benefits of eating the produce that they harvest and getting excited about it. So also nutritional benefits. And then last, and this is the one we're going to talk mostly about today, are the social and emotional development benefits, and that impacts a lot of the other health and wellness components of a young child. So things from self-confidence, getting patience, teamwork, and we're really going to kind of focus on some of those today. So next slide. So when we talk about health and wellness garden programs, probably what first comes to mind for a lot of people are the edible gardens, and actually getting to taste the fruits and vegetables fresh from the garden, get excited about tasting it because they grew it themselves, and there are a lot of benefits. But there's also a whole nother aspect, as we know, for the whole child to develop. There's the social emotional development too that contributes to overall health and wellness. In addition, there's also therapeutic gardens, which can very specifically target some specific therapies and physical, mental, and emotional health development. So we're going to kind of focus in on that today. So the first thing as we get started on the next slide is just to kind of briefly, and I know that we've gone through this in the last two programs too, but I just want to put in a plug for kind of how to lay the foundation of any kind of garden program, but specifically for a health and wellness garden program. The first step for any is to build a strong leadership team. You really need a group of people. A garden is not a one-person job, so you really need a strong group of people to serve both an advisory and more hands-on-the-ground garden committee. And when you're doing a health and wellness program, I wanted to make a special note that as you're doing this, I want you to think beyond people that may have an interest in garden or experience in gardening or a specialty in gardening, and really look at recruiting health and wellness specialists too. Even if they don't have a background in gardening, they may have some wonderful ideas that you may not think about on how to incorporate your health and wellness aspects to your garden. So make sure that you're kind of looking beyond, get your school nurses or local nutritionists involved too. So make sure to include that if your goal is really to look at health and wellness. And the next ones are the same. So we'll skip over to the next one, which is just on social and emotional development. So gardens provide opportunities for all sorts of different development opportunities. And so these are just kind of outlined some of the things that I have really seen in place. So for example, as they go through the process of working in the garden and putting the garden together, from the very first planning it to installing it to taking care of it, is a great opportunities for teamwork and practicing communication skills. So they're working the garden together, they're working on one goal together, and it's a great time to work on those. Another thing is a practice in patience. The seed only grows so fast. So as they're planting the seed and they watch it grow slowly, as they watch the fruits and vegetable harvest, it really helps you. It's a constant changing. So there's something new to be seen all the time, but at the same time, it's a slow process, and it definitely helps hone their patience. And then also in the garden, you have wonderful opportunities for sharing both tools, sharing what other people are seeing in all sorts of ways. Another great thing about the garden is that it allows children, especially young children, who have spent most of their lives being cared for by others. So they're not usually in the position of being the caretakers. And the garden allows them to step into those shoes of being the caretakers and being able to care for other living things and to feel that responsibility. So it's a great exercise and slowly giving them more that chance to be on the flip side of the coin. It also allows them to hone some basic life skills. Further on down the line, this could be potential job skills for them. And it is a great way also to contribute to their community. Once again, young children don't often get that many opportunities to make a big impact on how the area around them looks and how the area, how their environment is taken care of. But the garden can allow them to do that, and it's great to see them be so excited and proud of their work and to be able to show it to others as they walk by. So it really helps grow their confidence. So that's a really exciting thing that all the garden can offer for young children. So the next slide is just kind of jumping into yet a kind of one step further, and that's actual therapeutic gardens. So a therapeutic garden is just is different in that it's intentionally designed for a very specific health benefit, and it can be a physical health benefit, cognitive, emotional health benefit. Basically, you're stepping away and you're trying to target something very specific. And it can offer, for example, if you're trying to work on fine motor skills, then you want to do activities that might start out with kids planting large seeds, but slowly and slowly you work down to smaller seeds. If you're looking for a cognitive ability that you're trying to hone, you might build in a routine or instructions that kids are following, and you slowly make those instructions in that routine a little more complex as you go. So it's kind of there's a very wide scale for it, and I've put in here passive versus active garden programs. So a passive garden program would be one where just being in the garden and surrounded by nature is providing health benefits, whereas an active garden program is one that is more kids is active in the caretaking and in participating in the garden from installation to harvest. And really, most garden programs probably can range in that scale. So they don't have to be one or the other. They can be a little bit of both. So, and once again, when you're using a therapeutic garden, you're usually coming up with some kind of specific treatment plan for your guidance and your evaluation. So you're just really targeting it more. So the next slide. So both with therapeutic gardens and with health and wellness gardens, it's really important that kids can access the garden and be involved in the garden. So some real key tips to keep in mind is that you need to plan appropriate paths for the kids so that they can actually get into the garden and do all these great activities and experiences that you want them to have. So very important. You also may want to be creative in your planting spaces so that the kids can reach the gardens, depending on what kind of, you really have to look at your audience and what their needs are. And there are so many ways that you can adapt the garden space, from containers. And these pictures that I have here, I have some examples of some different vertical gardens. Both of these were adapted for people that were in wheelchairs, so they have easier access to it. You can do raised beds, and your raised bed height will depend on the kids that you are working with. You can also adapt garden tools so that they're easier to use. You want to make sure to be mindful of your plant selection. If you're worried, you definitely don't want to pick anything that might have thorns, that might be poisonous. And you also, another key is to incorporate sitting areas, which is something that we don't always think about, but because you want to be active in the garden, but you also want to be able to rest in the garden too. So the next slide is, we kind of touch on a sensory garden as something that is frequently used more for health and wellness and therapeutic programs. Once again, very important, if you are a sensory garden, is mainly a garden that engages your senses. So sight, smell, hearing, touching, tasting, so all of your senses. So once again, you want them to be able to access those plant beds in order to enjoy it. You can either target one or target multiple senses, and you just need to make sure to select appropriate plants. There are also some great accessories for gardens, sensory gardens, from water features to wind chimes, just all sorts of ways that you can engage the senses in addition to the plants. You want to make sure to embrace safety. Think about all of who you're going to have in your garden. Make sure that it's accessible. Make sure the plants are safe. And I've put this last one down as embrace exploration. And that's my nice way of saying that these have to be tough plants. This garden, a sensory garden, is one that gets touched and pulled and picked and prodded. And so more than anything else, a sensory garden must have tough plants, and you need to embrace that it's going to be touched, and it may have kind of a lived-in look to it, but that's it. That's a successful garden. So next slide, and I'm just gonna, on this next slide, we have some information on some different sensory plants to try. And since we're a little bit short on time, what I'm gonna do is we'll just pop this up here, and then we have a full list and information about all of the plants that I've listed here up on kidsgardening.org, and it's under our garden guide under sensory plants. So you'll be able to kind of check back with that. So I wanted to go to the next slide, and which I've included in here, is I wanted to make sure to mention to not forget indoor garden options, especially when health and wellness gardens. Kids spend a lot of time inside. If you're in a northern location, you may not have that much of your school year that is during your growing season. It just depends. And so don't forget that sensory gardens can certainly, and therapeutic gardens can certainly be planted inside. You have window gardens, plants that grow well in windows. You have grow lights. You can grow hydroponic systems. So there's a lot of options for indoor gardens too. So wanted to make sure to put a plug in to, just because you live in Vermont or Maine, you too can have a garden program at your school. in center. So the last slide here also has some just links for more information. This is obviously a very broad topic that I didn't get to really dive too deep into, but I just want to have these links to the American Horticultural Therapy Association. American Society of Landscape Architects also have some information on designing therapeutic landscapes, and then the Therapeutic Landscape Network also. So please know that there are other resources out there available to you. So I want to go ahead and send it over to our program spotlight. We're going to start with the ELS Center. Oh, sorry, there's a poll in here. Let me turn it back over to Sarah.
Yeah, just really quick. Let's see. I'm going to go ahead and launch this poll. 1 second. Just takes me a sec. All right. Just going to give you about 10 or 20 seconds to fill that out. Great. I'm going to go ahead and close that. Looks like we have about 20% yes, 77% not yet, but we hope to, and 3% no. I'm not sure if this is the type for us. Great. Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next slide and introduce Marlene and Amy to talk about their program, ELS for Autism.
Great. Welcome, everybody. This is Marlene and my partner in crime, Amy. And Amy and I work together.
Hi, this is Amy.
Yes, and Amy and I had the pleasure of working together.
I have to say I'm having a bit of trouble. Oh, sorry.
Amy, are you having trouble hearing us?
I am. I apologize. Everything has been smooth up until this point.
Oh, odd. Yeah, you sound fabulous from our end.
Okay. So sorry.
All right. Great. So this is Marlene, and I'm going to just give you a little bit of background about the ELS for Autism Foundation and how we came to have a sensory arts garden on our campus. And then Amy's going to jump in and give you more of the therapeutic design features and background. So the ELS for Autism Foundation is located in Jupiter, Florida. We actually have foundations also in the UK, Canada, and in South Africa, but this is the main foundation, and we have a 26-acre campus that serves individuals with autism and other developmental disabilities. Can you change the slide? And on our campus, we have 2 public charter schools that it's tuition free. They're independent of the foundation, and they serve students ages 3 to 22 years of age. In addition, the foundation provides services to individuals as young as 18 months all the way through adulthood. And of course, we know that individuals with autism have a lot of sensory needs and benefit greatly from sensory enrichment. And so we were fortunate enough to be able to get a grant from the Florida Cultural Arts Division that Amy helped to write to be able to build a pavilion that features the artwork of individuals with special needs. And attached to that pavilion is our sensory arts garden. And that garden is open to the public by appointment. And then it's accessible to the schools as well as to the clients and staff that come to the ELS Center of Excellence. And the foundation was started by Ernie Els, a pro golfer and Hall of Famer, and his wife, because their son has autism and he attends the school, and they wanted to make sure to be able to give back to the community and make sure that all people with autism have access to the very best services. And so we're very grateful to them in giving back to the community. And so as you see here, you see a picture of the campus, an aerial view, and then we have our sensory arts garden. And we'll be giving you a little tour of the garden through our video that we'll be showing you at the end. We'll go to the next slide.
Thanks, Marlene, and hello, everyone. I'm delighted to be with you today. So, to meet the unique needs of individuals with autism, our team, composed of Marlene, myself, and landscape architect David Camp of Dirtworks, we carefully designed the garden to provide an enriching and balanced sensory experience for those with hyper and hyposensitive responses to stimuli. Our design provided many taste, smell, touch, hearing, and seeing opportunities. And then we went further and included sensory experiences that enrich balance, which is part of the vestibular system located in our middle ears, and also movement and position in space, which is considered the proprioceptive system, which is located in the joints and muscles in our bodies. When all of these sensory systems are operating in sync, we're best able to go about our daily lives. So the end goal of the garden is to help everyone, and not just those with autism, to feel very whole and integrated. Because the garden is designed so that a teacher can observe the entire space wherever he or she happens to be at the moment, children are free to explore and engage with it as they so choose, and to really enhance and enrich their sensory systems. So next slide, please. When we talk about sensory enrichment, we're referring to experiences that are both stimulating or alerting or calming. And the garden really does provide both. Perhaps what is one of the best features of the design is that the garden elements or experiences tell their story. So on their own, visitors, be they children or adults, can easily find that special place or space or object that best meets their needs at that very moment. This means that there's opportunities for active engagement and quiet reflection, which we'll explore in the next few slides in more detail. I would like, though, to tell you a little bit about the photos in this slide. On your left are a series of sensory garden rooms with each raised planter representing a different sense and are accessible for seated and standing visitors, as Sarah was talking about. Because all of the plants have been vetted for safety and toxicity, visitors are encouraged to interact with them as they choose. In fact, we have some children who really must be garden designers, because some of the succulents planted in the touch planter have mysteriously reappeared in taste and smell planters. And one favorite plant, and I admit it's absolutely a favorite of mine, the lemon verbena, located in the smell planter, was very, very smelled and planted and touched because it needed replenishment pretty quickly. The image on the right is one of the quiet rooms, which we call the places away, each of which has a different purpose. And I'm going to talk about those in a moment. One noteworthy feature of these places away are what we call the dinosaur egg seats. They're purposely arranged so that the grouping of two invites quiet conversation or perhaps a nice long stretch out over the two seats. The single seat represents a more solitary space. Together, the seating arrangement is also useful for a teacher-led session or perhaps some type of a therapy session, OT or speech therapy. Two of the dinosaur eggs are located close to the smooth pathways rather than deep inside the pebble paving. For those who find the bumpy paving too much stimulation, there's no need to cross over it. They can merely take a seat right off the smooth path. The garden truly is for everyone. And next slide, please.
So when working with people with autism, what we found, just like with really the general population, is that there are times that we want to be in solitude and other times that we want to socialize. And the beauty of the garden is that it invites both experiences, in not only the area of the planters, but also in the places away. So the photos that you see currently on the slide are actually the places away. And they are inviting those individuals to join in and have an experience together. And what we found is that the students that are enjoying the garden, they go in and out of these two types of experiences. So they might be alone over by the water bubbler, and then they join in and go to the other area by the water wall so that they can join in with their friends. And to the right, you'll see the swing, which is the most popular area in the garden before the water wall was completed. And in fact, the students, we have to put a timer in order to let all the kids have a turn because they always want to go on the swing. I think that it's partially because it is the furthest tucked away places away, and also because the swing provides them with that motion that Amy can speak to further that allows them to feel their body in space and time. So you'll often find 3 or 4 kids sitting on that bench all squished together.
Yeah, so I think that, you know, what I'd like to add to the information that Marlene has provided is that the spaces really do support spontaneity, to go between the spaces, to find that space, that opportunity that at that moment feels just absolutely right. And In terms of the ever popular swing, it provides remarkable vestibular input as well as proprioception and kinesthesia. So it helps many children to feel very, very regulated and sort of complete within themselves. So again, spontaneity and flexibility really enable these places away spaces to support either solitude or socialization.
Next slide.
Next slide, please.
So the garden also serves as an outdoor classroom. There are a variety of classes that take place in the garden, yoga being one of them. We also have our music therapy classes. And in our early intervention program, we often find the teachers and students over in one of the places away doing a read aloud or doing some expressive type of games and activities. So it really provides for a different type of enriching environment that really helps those learners that are hard to reach. They're more motivated to participate and engage with the lesson when they're outside, one with nature. And it also provides that opportunity for the students to engage with each other where they're more confined in the classroom and it's more of an academic type setting. So those learners that are really hard to engage in instruction do much better in this type of outdoor environment where we can teach the same lesson but in a beautiful therapeutic garden. Next slide, please. In this slide, you'll see a variety of different types of learners. So in the bottom left corner, we have actually students that are on a regular diploma in the school, and they'll come out with their tutor or with a peer, and they bring their laptops, and they're working in the garden instead of, again, the sterile classroom environment. It provides a break from the classroom setting and allows also for the students to be able to engage in more conversation than they would in a classroom setting. We also have therapists that will do their intervention within the garden as well. So at the table in the middle photo, we have an occupational therapist who's working with the student at the table. And Amy will speak to you a little bit about these really cool tables that she found for the garden. And then on the right, we have the music teacher that's working with one of our children we have a program called Goals, where we have families that come from all over the world to be able to access our therapeutic services. And the garden really provides a great retreat for them to be able to engage with nature and be able to feel comfortable with the specialist that they're working with, that they have just met and really will only be with for a very short period of time. And so the garden is, especially for me as a music therapist, is especially a wonderful place to have music classes. And Amy, do you want to speak about the tables as well as the fact that we selected artificial turf instead of grass?
Sure, I'd be happy to. I'll start with the tables first. When we were trying to come up with some type of a seating arrangement in the garden, we looked at some of the standard tables and chairs and thought, oh no, we could do something better. This is a garden, and we happened upon this wonderful tree stump tabletop and seats. And what's very nice about them is, well, for one thing, they're very, 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 very sturdy, and the base is installed deep beneath the surface of the garden itself. They're designed such that there's wonderful wheelchair roll under access, so that they are quite universally designed. The stumps that the children sit on we have two different actual seating zones, if you will. One is set higher than the other to accommodate for larger children and smaller children. The tables are set so that even if a child is at a higher table, they can very comfortably sit to do their work, so that there's a lot of flexibility in terms of how the tables are actually sited and how they're used. And with regard to the surfacing, we opted to use artificial turf for a number of reasons. For one, maintenance would be much easier, and we were able to find an artificial turf that felt very, very realistic. And so much more comfortable to the touch, if you will. And another advantage to having artificial turf is for those children who like to pick at the grass and actually sort of denude the area, if you will. It's much more difficult with artificial turf.
Okay, next slide, please. So Amy touched upon the places away. And these areas, we have 3 different places away, and these areas really provide a nice reprieve for not only the children, but also the staff. And so each place away provides a different experience. So we have our water feature places away, and then we have our swing, and we also have our grand tree area that's also a nice area that's tucked away. And it provides a variety of seating options. So we might have a bench there or the swing, and then we have our dinosaur egg seating. Sometimes we'll see the students laying across the dinosaur eggs. They're really not called dinosaur eggs, but I think that that's what they look like. And they really provide a great input to the body as well. And I'll let Amy speak to this since it's her area. But it provides great input because the surface is not flat. There's different types of angles to those eggs. And then the student can also put their feet on the concrete, they can put them on the pebbles, or they can put them on the grass. So the water features are one of the most popular areas where the students will go and tuck away. And one other feature of the garden that's really essential, especially when working with young children, is that the designer, Dave from Dirtworks, was very diligent about creating a space where the teachers could supervise the children from a distance so that the children could feel free to be able to explore without someone hovering over them. And this is especially necessary for children with autism because they often are constantly being prompted by adults, obviously for their safety, but also to help them to engage with others. So what we found is that in the garden, they're able to freely flow through the garden in and out of the sensory areas to the places away, while the teachers are standing on the peripheral and the perimeter watching peripherally to be able to supervise and engage with the students as they see fit.
And I'll just add just a little bit of information and about kind of from more of an occupational therapy sensory perspective about these places away. In my mind, one of the most unique features of these places away, these little perimeter areas, a place to go for a little bit of respite or decompression when the time feels right to do so, is the pebble paving, as we've called it. And I kind of liken it to a reflexology experience. The stones are just slightly raised up from the surface, so it's just a bit of a bumpy experience. And so the tactile and the proprioceptive and even vestibular input that you receive when you're walking over the stones can, for many people, be extremely calming, but for others is very overstimulating and such. That's why the dinosaur egg or pebble seats are situated right where they are, never to discourage a child who wants to experience sitting in one with the different angles and contours to have the opportunity to do so. But if it's too hard to walk over the pebble paving, as I mentioned before, they can be accessed right from the smooth pathways. I think we can go on to the next slide.
And we have the Wow Wall of Water. So this has been the latest feature that was added. We had to do some fundraising to be able to add this feature, and it just opened a little over a month ago, and it has been the place for all of the children to go to. One of the beautiful features of this water wall is that the children can move right up to the water and put their hands on it, but yet it doesn't splash out to them. So they're not getting soaked, but they still can have that sensory experience. And we were really diligent about selecting the right color tile that provided a visual sensory experience, but that was still calming. And we've gotten great feedback about the color tile that was selected. It's also very smooth, so when the children pass their hand over the tile, it provides them with that nice smooth texture with the water flowing over their hands.
And if I could add with regard to color, blue is considered to be very much a calming color. So again, brilliant choice for the selection of the tiles for the water wall.
And we have one more slide for you. And before we go ahead and just touch base on these key features, I'd like to ask for that video to be shared so that you can get the overall feel of the entire garden.
Yes, definitely. I will go ahead and show that now.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah.
So the video is a drone above the garden that will give you an aerial view of all of the spaces that we've just discussed. So as you can see in the features here, the designer was very precise in allowing for these parallel pathways. It should be moving. You'll just have to press play on there.
Yeah, as soon as I press play, it will mute you. So I just wanted to make sure that you.
Oh, no, okay. I thought it was to narrate it. So I'll go quickly. So you can see the different planters that are in the center, and then you can see the pathways that are parallel to each other. And the teachers are able to really supervise the students from any angle, any point in that garden while allowing them free space. And although the swing is tucked away, the plants are not full enough to cause there to be a block in vision. So we are able to still supervise them. And then we have this beautiful grass oval area where we're able to do class type group settings for the yoga. We also do music there. And there's actually in the photo that you'll see last, there's a young man who's laying across the turf there, and that's his spot. That's where he always goes. So I'll go ahead and let the video roll. All right, so hopefully that gave you a broader photo, broader image of what the garden is about. And just some key features here that we have for the garden is it allows for individuals who are hypersensitive versus hyposensitive. You can see this young man, he's sitting on one of our blue pods that we have that are the outdoor seating, while we have the other one laying across the artificial turf area. It allows for independence versus a supervised, overbearing type of environment. It allows for individuals to be alone or together. You can be an active participant and engage with the plants, engage in the water wall or the swing, or you can be passive like the young man that's laying on the grass there. It could be more formal instruction, talking about the plants, watching as they grow, looking at butterflies and other types of insects that might join us on the garden, or it could be informal learning for more incidental teaching. It serves a dual purpose. It allows for visitors to come in and engage in the garden and be able to also engage in interacting with individuals with autism and understanding their perspective about their experience in being in the garden. And all of the plants, the water features, and the furniture were very targeted and thoughtful selections to ensure that they met the needs of people with autism spectrum disorder, but also were purposeful and meaningful for the community at large that would be also engaging in the garden. And the garden is a very flexible space. As Amy and I have shared with you, it provides such a variety of experiences that really keeps the individuals that are participating in the garden wanting to be part of it at all times. And when we've had some areas that, when we've had some times where we've had to do maintenance in an area and when we had to construct the water wall, the kids really had a hard time not being able to go into the garden. So we realized there that it was a really special place for them.
And if I could just add, thank you, Marlene, that was just wonderful. So no matter what the scale your garden is, or perhaps what you're planning it to be, for us, I think I can speak for both of us and say that the most important thing to remember is that nature really does have the capacity to positively impact all aspects of development. And we can't think of a better place for children to be than in a sensory garden.
Great, thank you guys both so much.
Thank you.
That was really wonderful, and I love all the images and the photos that you were able to show. It really does help understand it a little bit more. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to our next speaker, Shri. And I just want to go ahead and double check to make sure we can hear you fine, Shri.
Hello, this is Shri.
Yes, we hear you just fine. Go ahead and take it away.
Right. Thank you, Sarah. So I'm really happy to be here this afternoon and excited to share a few of the sensory nutrition education program activities that we have been really fortunate to design and implement with input from Head Start nutritionists, Head Start teachers, and especially the children and the families in the Head Start sites in Massachusetts and Illinois, and now in Michigan as well. As the left part of the image, the FoodZotic logo, which you are looking at, that was the initial logo that we introduced as we were beginning to launch the sensory food education program among children. And I would like to acknowledge also, as part of this sharing, Harish Ganguri, who has been instrumental in helping with the technology and also the database, leading the team for the implementation of the activities in the classroom setting and the evaluation as well of the program. Next slide, please. I would like to talk a little bit about how we went about incorporating the senses. And as part of that, I would say the very first step in that process was actually receiving funding from U.S. Department of Agriculture to further enhance our pilot work that we had introduced in Massachusetts, when the Head Start teachers and the Head Start nutritionists approached my team asking if we could come up with some activities for circle time that would engage the children with an inclusive approach, and especially engage the children from the point of view of embracing the energy level of the children and varieties of energy levels across the circle setting. And the circle time socialization and the consideration of that structure in circle time was that was something that the teachers and the nutritionists requested that we keep that in mind as one of our main primary goals as we introduce the sensory component. So as we were identifying the specific sensory components, there is this method which you may have already been familiar with, which is SAPIER, which is like the sensory awareness. It's a method of teaching which builds upon the Montessori style of teaching. And the Sapir method of teaching is the background for the sensory education awareness that we introduced here in the classroom. And the outcomes that we were interested in evaluating were the willingness to try different fruits and vegetables, local, exotic from a perspective of a preschool child. Exotic in the sense, in this context would be fruits with any unusual characteristics. We label these as fruits with hair, fruits with seeds, or red fruits with seeds, for example, or coconut, pineapple, kiwi fruit, which are categorized under fruits with hair. And engaging the senses has been found to be much more effective when multiple senses are involved rather than just involving the taste component alone. Next slide, please. So going along with the sensory education, it is a multi-sensory component, and we were particularly interested in building layers that would be integrated across the senses. And as part of that, music, we have CDs that are available that we have introduced and recorded actually with the children singing the Five Senses song. And also one of the Michigan Department of Agriculture Massachusetts as well as USDA, keeping with the guidelines. And we wanted to introduce the children to a vegetable or a fruit growth life cycle of the plant using whole vegetable props, for example, and introducing the components that are needed for children, for plants to grow with sunlight and water, the root system. Not going into details, but basically we introduced props that in circle time could be displayed using a facilitator guided approach. So the props were introduced by farm animal puppets as part of a picnic theme, a farm animal adventure, if you will, where there are two farm animal puppets that go on a sensory exploration. And one farm animal is familiar, which is Bouncy the bunny, is familiar with every fruit, every vegetable, the growth pattern. And the children got introduced to Bouncy the bunny through our students who were trained to be puppets in the classroom setting. And another puppet is accompanying Bouncy the bunny, and each puppet each week was introduced to the children. Bouncy is a recurring character bunny every week. And the other puppet which accompanies Bouncy is not so familiar with the growth cycle of plants. So the Bouncy, the bunny, introduces the other puppet to what is the pea pod, what does the vine look like? How does the pea pod grow from the seed? And how does the pea pod texture feel like? What does it sound like? What does it smell like? So it is a very much guided approach, which were one set of classrooms. And then we also have classrooms where the children are self-exploring the fruits and vegetables. Next slide, please. And I think I got ahead of myself. So here is the format. What you're looking at is the puppet-guided sensory exploration. And the bottom part of the slide, there were accessories in the kit that we have available for the sensory education for the classrooms to utilize, farm animal puppets. And then literacy component is also a very significant part of our sensory education program. So a variety of books highlighting the specific fruit or vegetable that is introduced each week as part of the literary or the literacy component for the children to be encouraged to try the new fruit or the less familiar fruit or vegetable. And Bunny's Garden is one that is very popular among the children in Illinois and Massachusetts. And we introduced a variety of other books like A Fruit is a Suitcase for Seeds, and some others like Watermelon Day, Chicka Chicka Boom Boom. That is another one when we did the coconut exposure for the fruit with hair theme. Next slide, please. Keeping with the format for the education initiative where the sensory components build on each other, including the classroom exposure in circle time, book reading, music, or songs, for example. And also gardening is a very significant part. Several of the teachers in Head Start provided us amazing support. So many of the sites are already growing plants and in their site gardens. So we did an indoor garden, keeping Massachusetts, Illinois, and now in Michigan as well, an indoor garden and a mystery box activity where each child was given different seed packets, and the families were asked ahead in terms of the recipes that they would like to incorporate if the children brought home the particular fruit or vegetable. So here you see two children here helping each other, and that is part of the sensory education in the circle time. It was amazing in how the children interacted with each other and provided amazing peer support. So socialization is a very significant. Unexpectedly, I feel like that was one of the most predominant facilitator of the sensory education initiative in the circle time setting. And here we have a tomato plant. We can see just the beginning stages of the plant there. Next slide, please. The logo on the left, the Mass Farm Fresh Classroom Garden Project, somewhat signifies some of the vegetables, broccoli, cauliflower, carrots, pea pods, tomatoes. These were one of the earlier components of the program. And then we introduced the vegetables in pairings based on feedback from the teachers, recommending that we introduce familiar with a paired with an unfamiliar vegetable for the children, like carrots and parsnip, pea pods and beans, green beans, beetroots, beets and radish, broccoli and cauliflower. And each of these, bring different characteristics in terms of the sensory profile, with the texture, the taste and the color, the sound if they were to, snip the vegetable. So that was also a significant part here. Next slide, please. And in addition to the classroom component for music, gardening, classroom garden, we also had very significantly creative component of the children expressed here with, this is a strawberry print. As you can maybe see if it's closely examined, you see the children playing with strawberry, because the sensory play approach, we would like to keep that like an open exploration play approach with paint. And this turned out to be a fantastic mural, because all children in all of the classrooms in Head Start were so creative in how they expressed the fruit paint on different sheets of paper. So we ended up displaying also the murals in the lobbies of the sites for the parent-teacher events and for other expos, like the Fruit Expo, which was the culmination of the program. To the left, you see that FoodZotic is one of the posters, which are undergraduate nutrition students designed to express the features of the program. Next slide, please. Also, art, building different fruit, vegetable themed materials, using as materials, and you can see the pepper print activity, and the peppers were used, the stem of the pepper, holding the pepper, and then painting, depending on the the stage of the classroom. So if this was a 3-year-old child holding the stem versus a 5-year-old child, creating the murals, these were displayed. These are children's creations, I should say. Next steps, please. Next slide, please. So the growing touch, feel, the texture, the sound, this was emphasized. A pineapple crown. The hand tracing activity is a very popular activity for the children to learn, and the characteristic features. In one of the earlier slides, I had Passport to Mass Farm Fresh. We created like the touch and feel books. We created individual passports for the children. They were super excited, and that is one of the best products that the children love, is they get to experience every fruit and vegetable through the passports and the sensory characteristics in those passports. And in the interest of time, I do have some additional slides, but I will defer to Sarah, if we would like to continue or wrap up with follow-up later.
Yeah, that will be great. If anyone has any questions for Sri or any of the other speakers, to just make sure you send those in the questions box. And thank you so much for being mindful of the time. We're going to go ahead and move on to the polls. We don't have too many questions that have come in yet, but please, everyone who's still attending, we're probably going to go just a few minutes over, 1 or 2 minutes over, if you can, and just go ahead and add your questions now if you have any in the questions box. But I will go ahead and launch this poll. It's really helpful to gauge your feedback from this webinar too. How likely are you to plant a sensory or other therapeutic garden in your center from what you've heard today? So it seems like we have, I'm going to go ahead and close that poll. Seems like we have about 40% very likely, 30% somewhat likely, and then about 25% not sure yet, and 30% already have one. That's helpful. And then one thing I did want to mention before we close up today is the future Grow More Good Garden Grants initiatives. Like I mentioned earlier, we have awarded our first cohort this year, and they've already started their build days and started to plant their crops and everything starting this spring, and some even over the summer. But our next round for applications for Cycle 2 will open on August 5th, so please keep a lookout for those field messages that we will send out far and wide on our social media channels and our field messages here from NHSA, and I'm sure Kids Gardening with Scott's Miracle-Gro will also be sharing them. We do not have the open registration or application link yet, but we will have that coming soon. So just keep an eye out for that. If you do not see it coming in on any of your social channels or your emails or lists or anything, please be sure to email me. My email for NHSA is gardens@nhsa.org, and my personal email is sneal@nhsa.org, but I will show you that at the end of the slide. We also have a few questions coming in. Well, before we go on to those, I do want to ask if any of you do plan to apply for the next round of grants, and this is referring to the Grow More Good grant. Just a couple more seconds to answer that. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close that. That's great. It's about 50% yes, 15% no, and then about 30–40% not this year, but in the future. That's great. And here are some additional support resources. So I definitely encourage you to check out that URL address right there. There's some really great resources on the Kids Gardening website, and also from our website, NHSA, that's provided in the beginning. You can access that resource there. So I highly encourage you to check that out. And then now we'll move into a couple of questions. A couple of questions that came in about these slides and the recording. I just want to mention that these slides are provided as a PDF in your handouts on the webinar toolbar. So you can go ahead and click that handouts icon. You should be able to download the slides there. If not, just email me after and I will get it to you, but I would encourage you to just go ahead and click on that and download them there. You will also get the recording to this webinar tomorrow afternoon, along with a certificate and a survey. I highly encourage you to complete that survey. It's really helpful for us to kind of learn what else you would like to learn about this topic for future webinars. It's incredibly helpful. So please complete that survey for us. I also want to mention that our future webinar coming up is in August, so you will see a lot more field messaging about that coming out soon. So let me know if you have any questions. But I do want to go ahead and provide my email up on the screen right there. As you can see, the gardens@nhsa.org, and that's the website. So if you have any questions at all, please reach out to that email. If some of you are still available, there are a couple of questions that are coming in. If the speakers are still available, I just will take a couple of them. One question is, can you talk a little bit more about the water wall? I think that's for Marlene and Amy. Could you talk a little bit more about how you got connected with the company who designs them, and a little bit more about that?
Marlene, are you on?
She may have had to step off. That's totally fine. We will get back with you about that question.
Yeah, I do know that there was fundraising that was involved in obtaining the monetary amount of money needed to install the wall. It was definitely definitely a very sort of intricate process, if you will, to make sure that the wall was very safe for the children and met specifications to both be very tactily and sensorially engaging, but also, again, to be very, very safe for the children. And it is recycling or recirculating water. So
very helpful. Thank you. Thanks so much. And then much of the other questions were just regarding access to the webinar recording and certificates. So yes, you will receive a email tomorrow with the webinar recording and the certificate and a survey attached. So please complete those and let me know if you have any other questions. But I know that we are 5 minutes over, so I will go ahead and turn off the webinar. If there are any other questions, just please send them to gardens@nhsa.org, and I will get back to you. Thank you guys so much for being able to join today, and thank you so much to all the speakers today. It was really valuable information, and please let us know if you have any questions.
thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.